Welcome to Curious Joel, a show about curiosity taking us deeper into the topics of people's passion and interesting conversation. My guest today is Flora Doodle. Now, Flora, how are you doing today?
What'd you say?
How are you doing today?
How am I doing today? I am fine.
And how would you describe your passion that we were talking about today?
My passion for family and being with family.
Yeah.
That's my main job.
Okay. Why I brought you on is you have raised 8 children. You've homeschooled them all, and you have done it in a particular way. And you've made a lot of choices that have led to that. Um, so I guess the first question that I would ask in regards to that is, without getting too political, if possible, why have you chosen to homeschool? Because homeschooling is a lot of work. Why did you choose to homeschool?
Because when I was growing up, I was the one that was picked on in school. And even though I thrived academically, I could clear a table just by sitting and everybody would leave. And I didn't want my children to have that. Also, after I became a Christian, um, having a biblical worldview is very important to me, so that when if I sent my children to school and I said something from the Bible, they might answer back, "Well, the teacher said," or "My school book said," and I would rather that they answered, "The Bible says."
Okay.
So I wanted a biblical worldview and less of the worldly influences of school. And if it was like that when I was in school, and later I was a school bus driver and I saw the influence then there too, it hasn't improved.
Sure. Okay. Um, and then,
And I so at first I thought about private school, but I couldn't afford that for sure. And as many people at my time, they heard an interview of Dr. Raymond Moore on Dr. Dobson's program,
mhm,
and that's the first time I heard of homeschooling.
okay.
And when my first two were 1 year old, I heard that program, and I decided that's what I was going to do.
Okay, so this actually kind of leads me into my next question on the other side of you said your first two were one. Explain that a little bit.
That's how twins are. I
So,
never had just one. I started with two.
okay. So, let's talk about your family a little bit. Just describe your family.
Well, I went to school and I met my husband in ninth grade.
Okay.
That doesn't mean we were high school sweethearts. It just
Sure.
means that's where we met and we became friends
Okay.
and we're pretty good friends. And we had other interests, but wasn't till we'd been friends for 6 years is when we got married. So friendship first was the most important thing and how we worked together. I know it doesn't sound very romantical, but it was very logical.
Um,
And
yeah.
then well, we started with twins, and they're starting to catch up to me in age because I certainly haven't got any older. So started with twins and being identical. I wanted them to have their own. I didn't dress them identically. Mhm. I wanted them to be their own person,
Right.
and that people would have to get to know them, but I would anyway get to know them.
Individuals versus.
Yes,
Oh, those are the twins.
yeah.
Okay.
I only mention them as twins as it's necessary. Mhm. Uh, but and because I had twins, um, I thought I was going to go back to work after the first baby was born.
Mhm.
But it seemed to me that having twins, I was going to spend more on childcare than I was going to make in my paycheck.
Sure. Yeah.
and I would miss the best part of their day.
Mm,
And so that's when I decided to stay home. And then, and after that, it's when I decided to homeschool.
gotcha. Okay. So you started homeschooling your twins, and then
Well, they were 4 years old
okay.
when, or maybe they were three. When I, back then, I didn't realize I was a pioneer, but uh, homeschooling had little challenges depending on what state you're in. And where where I live, you really had to have conviction to have a defense. And so I joined a homeschool park day group when they were 3, so that I could develop my conviction to find out what else was there. But my main purpose was to raise godly children that would love Jesus.
Okay.
So I went to a homeschool group to develop my conviction and develop relationships with others.
Hmm.
And those relationships lasted a long time.
That's good. So you started with twins. What comes next?
Who comes next?
Sure. However,
4 years later, we get another boy,
okay.
and and he was really easy until he started moving, started crawling around and climbing.
Um, so you have two 4-year-olds and a newborn.
Yep.
All right. What added challenges uh, would people not necessarily think of when it comes to I started with twins and now I have a 4-year-olds and a newborn?
Since the first two were so helpful, I really thought that one was going to be helping me and the other one was going to be helping the baby. It turned out being the other way around.
What do you mean the other way around?
That the one I thought that was going to be helping the baby ended up being helping me and the other one.
Oh, okay, so you just picked one and two wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how that went. So from the beginning, they were helpers.
Okay.
And that probably is the biggest key to raising a big family is that the older ones help the younger ones.
Hmm. Okay. So started with 3 boys. You have twins, and then you have
Not a boy.
another boy. Who's slash what's next?
Oh, what?
Well, I
Who's
don't. I'm trying to because after the twins, it wasn't a who's next, it was what's next, and that was homeschooling. So that's why I'm leaving
Oh,
space for
okay.
what like are there like leaving space for child like other challenges that have arisen with raising these 8 children.
Yeah.
So I'm not just trying to
Okay.
jump from one birth
Okay.
to the next birth,
We moved.
but like okay, so at 3, you're at 3 kids.
We moved. We moved.
See, there's the what.
Well, since you said describe told what meant, then I could say that. Um, what was fun was when the first two were 4, is that we lived around the corner from grandma and grandpa.
Okay.
And they thought they were so big because I'd be on the phone with grandma telling her, okay, here they come. And I would watch them to the corner and then she would tell me, hey, I see them on the corner. And then she would watch them go to the spot right across the street and wait for grandma to cross them across the street. And they
Gotcha.
thought they were doing it all by themselves.
Gotcha.
They didn't know we were watching, but we didn't hold their hand except for the street.
Sure. Okay.
And then they moved and they rented the house to us, so we just moved around the corner.
Okay, so that was a pretty easy move for 3 young children.
No move is easy,
Well,
but that's probably the easiest move.
that's what I meant is like for it being a move with 3 small children, that's got to be probably the easiest. My minus like throwing boxes literally next door through a window.
Well, we borrowed a truck to move the 9 foot couch and the refrigerator, but I
Yeah.
can still picture our good friend and I don't know who else, but it took two people to move the swing set and carry it around the corner to the next house, the next yard.
But that's what I was meaning. Is like considering you're moving
That's
with
probably the
three
easiest
children,
move.
it's probably the easiest possible move that someone could imagine. Um, you're not moving across the country or anything like that. You're just, hey, go over that way. Nope, over that way.
It's still not easy, but it was the
No.
easiest.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys moved. What or who is next?
Who is next
Okay.
is the girl.
The girl. Okay. So now you have four children, three boys, one girl.
Hmm.
What challenges arose from now I have uh four kids and this is my first girl? What challenges arose then?
Not much, except for whenever I bought clothes or made clothes for number three, I'd make them red so that when they got handed down to number four,
Yeah.
she had something that was red.
Okay.
And actually, number three looks pretty good in red. Um, anyway, I didn't see any uh, big challenges to going from boys to girls. I mean, I learned a lot about boys, considering that I come from a family of only girls. So
That's
I,
true. Yeah. You come from a family of just girls. So I didn't think about that. Do you want to address that briefly of going from just your sisters to living in a house with, well, four boys?
yep,
You have
boys
your
don't ever
husband,
grow
you
up. They
have your
become
husband,
adults, but they're still boys.
twins, and your number three as well. Like, so you went from just girls to just boys. What was that transition like? Like,
I learned a lot about boys. Boys are fun. And after a while, I realized that you can tell a boy mom from a girl mom because boy moms talk in sound effects because boys talk in sound effects.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun one. And so when I'm talking with other moms or other women, and then I find out they're moms, and I, cause you have boys, don't you? Well, how'd you know? You speak in sound effects.
Okay. All right. So you've now had your first girl. What other changes came with that? Was there anything else? Like, did any of the older brothers have any issues adjusting to having a girl in the house?
I don't think they really cared, but I gotta
Okay.
tell you, when she was first born, I looked into her eyes and I saw my eyes,
Mm,
mommy's eyes, and my grandma's eyes.
okay.
That was a special moment.
Yeah, I imagine it would be. Um, okay. So you a deep family resemblance in the eyes. Uh, so you now have four. Um, what comes next? I know
Well,
there's a few things, and I'm not sure how much you want to share on my show.
well, we had a lot of fun, and the first two they learned how to read when they were
Mhm.
4.5. Their personalities are more girl-like. They didn't wear out their clothes like boys usually do. If you go to a thrift shop, it's going to be hard to find uh, jeans without holes in them after they get to size 4. But
Mm,
these two are easy on the clothes, so there's a lot to hand down.
okay.
Um, and then the next one was all boy, and I'm really glad that I uh, well, the first two, they got colds in Sunday school. They get cold, they got ear infection, and then they get better. And then I put them in Sunday school and they get sick again. So when the next ones came around, I decided, you know what? their immunity is not really very strong until they're 4, and that's about when that's when they finally learn not to put stuff in their mouth and they don't mouth all over and share their germs as much as like 2-year-olds and toddlers. They like to
Sure.
they share a lot of germs,
Mhm.
and so I didn't have my children in Sunday school until they were 4.
Okay.
Uh, where was I going with that? Um,
Not sure.
mm, oh, I forget where I was going.
I do have a question that might possibly get us back on track because I was we're kind of moving towards like uh I know there's a gap. But really quick, so first two age difference between first two and third
7
one.
minutes.
Quick. 7 minutes between the twins. And then from 1 to 2 is 7 minutes. From 2 to 3 is 4 years.
From 81 to 86.
5 years?
4.5.
4.5. Okay, because you were talking about 4 year olds and then having a newborn.
Yeah.
So
Four and
that's
a
what I was
half.
like. Okay, so 4.5 years between first two and number three. Then from number three to number four,
16 months.
16 months. Okay, and then um,
14. Well,
it's not. We don't need that
yeah.
that specific, but
Yeah.
okay. So after number four, what does that period look like for you?
After 4?
After the first four.
Well, um, let's see. First grade, for the first 2, they were invited to Awana, and then uh, so a director called me, and they were starting Awana at the church, and they asked me if the first 2 would like to be in Awana, and so I said, "Well, tell me about it." They told me about it, and I said, "Well, if they're going to be there, I'm going to be there. I don't just drop them off."
Yeah.
So I was pregnant with number 4 at that time. So however old she is how long we've been doing Awana because we're still doing it,
Okay.
and the grandchildren are doing it too.
All right.
Not all of them, but
Mhm. Um. So anything else in that gap between 4 and 5?
uh, 2 miscarriages.
Okay.
Um, any big changes? I can't think of much.
You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but what were the gaps between 4 and miscarriages?
Um, it it was we got 2.5 years after number 4,
Okay.
and I don't remember when the other one.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
Like I said, we don't have to talk about this if you don't want to. I just
well, we had a rabbit,
okay.
and it really does. We have a rabbit, and there were, and dogs.
Okay.
Well, I guess anyway. Um, and the dog, the rabbit had a cage, and I thought it was pretty secure. But the stupid dumb dog, the one that acts like a cat, uh, was a hunter and decided that rabbit was an invader in our backyard and opened the cage. The rabbit got out and he killed the rabbit. So I brought the rabbit into the bedroom because I don't know why, but it just kind of, I was just out in the front room. I don't know if we were watching TV or whatever. And I was just thinking, something just happened in the backyard. I didn't hear anything. I just felt it.
Hmm.
And I went in the backyard and there was the rabbit. Uh, All I can figure is the dog broke its back. It was still alive,
Mm,
and the children were all in bed. They weren't asleep yet, and I wanted them to say goodbye to Tawny.
okay.
And I brought the rabbit in so they could say goodbye to Tawny. But how this relates is so I could explain to them what the miscarriage was, that this is death,
Mm,
and that I had a baby, but the baby died.
mm,
So I teach very concretely whenever possible.
mhm.
So having them see the rabbit, besides that it wasn't just going to disappear and they wondered. I I believe in real
You didn't send them
experiences.
off to a farm to live on, you know.
No, I don't lie.
Yeah.
I don't want to be caught in a lie.
Mhm,
Um, and we buried the rabbit, but I wanted them to say goodbye to Tawny, and then also that was an example of death, so that they would understand that we had a baby, but the baby died.
mhm. Okay. Um, so you have two miscarriages, and then and also dead rabbit. Um, and then what's the gap between number 4 and number 5?
Um, from 86 to 88 to 95.
7 years.
So that's 7. I always thought it was 8. I don't know why.
Okay. So having a 7-year gap. So before 5 was here, what did that look like before that number 5 came?
Uh,
Because you have your youngest is 7, and then
well, we used to do a lot of things that the older ones uh, think that number 5 spoiled for them. We used to go bike riding, and I made a T-shirt. I painted T-shirts, and I made a T-shirt for my husband that says, "Oh, what it say? Oh well, it has pictures of bicycles on it, and the smallest one is a little, uh, just a little one for like a 2-year-old, no pedals, and the one for the 4-year-old's a tricycle, and up to my 10 speed and Daddy's heavy duty Schwinn book bike that he used for delivering papers through high school.
Mhm.
Um,
So you kind of had like what a lot of people today would have, like the
oh, I know what it says. It says a family that plays together has fun.
it sounds like it was a bumper sticker before bumper stickers were popular, of like the stick figure families, or the
It was a
different.
family of bicycles.
Yeah,
It was just a family of bicycles. My bicycle, everybody's bicycle.
yeah.
The twins have twin bicycles, and
Mhm.
because they're the same.
No, I remember, just like, it just reminds me of a lot of the bumper stickers I've seen, but obviously your way of doing it.
You don't know how long bumper stickers have been around then.
You're right. I don't. I just know that the popularity has spiked recently, and there's people that have their car covered head to toe in bumper stickers.
I've seen cars covered in bumper stickers in the 70s too.
Okay, well,
So
okay. Let me rephrase.
you went back the typewriter?
Well, no, I'm sorry. Let me specify. I meant like the stick figure family on the back of the car. I don't know
Oh,
how long those specifically
oh,
have been around.
those.
I know their popularity kind of spiked around 2010-ish, and then there were around 2020 was when there was a lot of like, my T-Rex thinks your stick figure family tasted yummy, and it's or like, and then there's also like the Stormtrooper families, and the modifications, and being silly with them, and yeah,
Yeah, I did
but
T-shirts like that. I used teddy bears to represent a family
yeah.
for custom orders.
Okay, so what else besides bike riding kind of happened in that time frame where you actually have, you know,
Played in the snow. We'd go to the mountains and go play in the snow. And
because you didn't have a infant or 2-year old or anything like that walk around. You had older children,
Mhm.
that no one's watching the baby right now.
We all
Um,
fit in the car. We did have well, we started with a 73 Honda Coupe, and when the first two were year old, we got the Volkswagen van.
uh,
So now we had seven passenger van.
yeah.
So yeah, everybody fit. And of course, number five would fit too.
Mhm. So let's, unless there's something else in that gap, let's go to number five.
Well, there's a lot that happened, but it's just daily life.
Sure. I meant like
Yeah.
any events or anything like that that would change family dynamic or anything like that. But no moves, no major life events in that time period.
Oh, we stayed in that house for a long time.
Okay. So number five.
Number five was different from the beginning.
Okay. How so?
I almost miscarried.
Oh,
Yeah, we were hosting a lot of Bible quiz in our church, and I was bleeding a little, and I wasn't very far along. Well, about 3 months maybe, and I would just rested and rested, and after Bible quiz, we went to my friend's house, and just spent a week and let her just take care of me for a week so I could just rest and recuperate. So from the beginning, number five was different, and as the due date was approaching, uh, yeah, I had the water was leaking ahead of time, and you know what? If I go in the hospital, they're going to check me, and as soon as they check me, it's a 24-hour clock, and I don't know how long. It was just drips, so it was replaceable. It was no big deal, and eventually, after a week, I think it was time.
okay. So were you worried about having a third miscarriage? Like,
I did. I'm not a worrier. Um, I was just doing what I could to prevent it, and it the swan has a story.
gotcha. So continuing on with number five, you said different from the beginning. That implies that there's other differences besides just from the beginning, because it was, oh, the beginning was different. That's where that ends, is almost miscarried, and then, well, after that everything was normal.
And then almost had uh, giving birth earlier than should. Uh, I ended up this one was 11 days early, and could have been earlier. I don't remember exactly. So yeah, uh, the labor was different too. It was the longest labor, although there was a break in the middle where I took a nap, and the people around me, what are you going to say? Yeah, I'm tired. No contractions. I can take a nap.
Okay. So really quick, you said the longest labor. What was your average labor time before number five? If you could guess.
Let's see. The first one was 4 hours. Next one was 8 hours. The next one was 7 hours.
Correct. And then number five,
Was
including the nap,
including the nap was 10.
10. Okay. If you exclude the nap,
I don't know how long the nap was.
I'm scared. 'Cause
People who were frustrated that I decided to take a break.
I don't know if I've ever heard of someone just like, all right, and pause, time out.
Hey,
Go to your
contractions
corner.
stop.
Go to your corners. Split bucket, stool,
To break.
quick rub down. All right, go back. Mary. So longest labor, took a nap in the middle. Anything else that was different with like the birth?
Uh, yeah. Um, the the I had a friend with me. This is the first time I had a friend to advocate for me. That all she did was sit in the corner, and it was fine. It was fine. That sometimes all you need is someone there for your backbone, and
Yeah.
that if I saw her growl a few times because the doctor or the nurse said something, and they were ready to jump in, but I took care of it,
Hmm.
and uh, and so she was there for me, but she didn't have to do anything but just be
Sure.
there, which is important.
Sometimes you just need the support, the moral
Yeah,
support. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And that's something we'll talk about a little later, I'm sure.
Right.
Um, so the doctor said, if I just break your water, you can have this baby in 15 minutes. And I said, well, let me think about it. And she came back a little later. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And and I forgot to tell you that number 4, the only girl, was praying for her sister.
I mean, yeah, when you live with in a house with mostly boys, I could imagine you'd want another girl in the house,
Yeah, she was praying
especially
for her
after seven
sister.
years of being the
And
baby sister.
and it's not like at that time we couldn't peek ahead of time. I chose not to peek.
Sure.
I like surprises. Um, yeah, that was that. Going back a little bit, I didn't do all the prenatal testing. I just remember in the office, we could do some prenatal testing and we can prevent birth defects like Down syndrome. And you're not preventing Down syndrome. You're killing the baby, so it's not born.
Mhm.
And that was the poster child for Down syndrome. And I was 35, and at 35, all of a sudden you're a geriatric maternity patient.
Mhm.
And no, I'm not doing the testing. And didn't peak. So anyway, so number 5 is born, and he's a boy. So number 4 cries her eyes out because she doesn't have a sister yet.
Yeah.
So anyway, uh, he goes to sleep, and the nurses are bugging me to wake him up and try to feed him. So at 11 o'clock, I wake him up to feed him, and he did not go back to sleep until 6:30 a.m. I did all my mommy tricks to get this baby to sleep.
Mhm.
He still has sleeping issues. He's almost 30 and still has sleeping issues. But
So that's what you meant by different from the beginning. Is they've just been different their whole life.
yeah, yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah.
I,
Um,
I did eventually want to get because you did say the in the beginning it started
uh,
off with
yeah.
plays a
And the
lot more
nurse comes in at 7:30 and wants to do her exam. I said, "You don't touch him. I just got him to sleep, and you're going to leave him alone." She backed off.
So born a night owl basically.
That was rough. He was also very, very connected. I nursed all my babies. It's very important to me. Saved a lot of money too.
Yeah.
And golly, it sure helps lose all the weight that was gained too. There's a
Sure.
lot of benefits. And so I nursed all of them. And he was very connected. And he would take nap. He'd take lap naps, and I couldn't put him down. He would wake up. I would have to lay down next to him to get him asleep. And then, as carefully as I could, kind of crawl away like a spider. it takes a lot of work to get off of bed without shaking the bed.
Sure. You didn't have any of those drop a bowling ball on one side, the glass of wine doesn't shake on the other side beds yet.
Well, that's how the bed I have now is advertised, but it's not true.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Um, yeah, that was a challenge. That child, um, I think of anybody else with his mother, he would not be alive today. Um, I
Okay.
just wanted to put him in the crib,
Hmm.
and he wouldn't.
Yeah.
That was very frustrating.
Okay. So now another family dynamic change. You now have a 7-year old as the youngest, and then you have a gap, and then you have an infant. How did that affect the first four?
Well, they all enjoyed having a baby in the house,
Okay.
and they did help.
Okay.
we, I don't know why we did this, but we went to my friend's house in Tucson in the Volkswagen without air conditioning in July. And I I am a dedicated cloth diaper too, so I washed the diapers, but I didn't have time to throw them in the dryer yet. And because this baby was set me up so much at night,
Mhm.
because I had older children to take care of him in the morning, I could go back to sleep. I think it's the only time that I had any form of postpartum depression too.
Hmm.
And my depressions are not low because I'm not quite stoic.
Mhm.
I don't get very high and I don't go very low. And anyway, so we went on this trip and I wasn't going to, I, I didn't set an alarm to get up and go early. I wanted to be well rested because I'm the only driver. So we left about 11 and, uh, and those wet diapers became swamp coolers. Uh, they were clean and they were wet, and we put them on our heads one at a time to keep us cool. And as they dried, we got another wet one,
Mhm.
and it worked so well that I did it on purpose coming home July. And number five was 5 weeks old. And what's funny is when we got there, my friend, their dog had puppies that were 5 weeks old. And they're running around and jumping and doing all this, and this one is not doing that. Humans take longer to develop.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. And then he really liked being outside.
So,
And even at 113 outside, he
mhm.
would rather be outside. So the big ones took turns walking him out, taking him outside. So for whatever reason, he liked it out there. And and I remember number one was taking him outside, and oh, he's nice and calm now, and he thought he could come back inside. He put one foot over that threshold and "Mm," complaining. Sorry, son. Bye. And out he goes again with number five. So that was an interesting trip. And then coming home, like I said, same thing. And I was wondering if all these cars on the side of the road, how come my car isn't on the side of the road? Because it was hot, and Volkswagens don't have radiators.
Hmm.
But we made it.
Yeah, okay. What other like family dynamic changes happened because now there's four older children and an infant?
Well, they all pitched in,
Okay.
and I taught all of my children how to cook, and and take care of the house. So everything's working pretty well.
Okay.
Um, let's see. So the oldest ones are 13, moving on to 14. So they're very helpful. And they think it's because number 5 arrived that we stopped doing the bicycle riding, but they don't realize that uh, Daddy's work schedule changed, so he wasn't available on the, for us to do that together.
Yeah.
And besides that, I was quite uncomfortable on a bicycle. I'd been trying all sorts of things to be comfortable. I padded the seat. I wore padded shorts. I did what I could, and I just couldn't be comfortable before number 5 was born.
Gotcha.
So there's things that they don't know that accumulated to not doing that anymore, and they blamed it on number 5.
Sure.
It
It's
was
an easy
perfect
target.
when there was 4 of us.
Yeah. So there were other changes in that gap of work schedules and other things that changed, but it's an easier something that I've learned in customer service. This is something I was just talking a couple days ago with my bosses about. Uh, we had a really rough weekend, and most of that was nothing to do with our hotel. But it's easier to blame a person in front of you than the fact that the app you were using to book third party is not giving you what you wanted. So it's easier to go, there's a person I can yell at. Me yelling at my phone, I look stupid. But if I yell at a person that has nothing to do with it, I'll be at least feel okay about myself. And so it's easier to blame a singular target, a physical target, a human target, than it is to, well, things are difficult for no one particular reason. It's a hey, you there. So um, I know what it's like to be that emotional punching bag for people coming up and going, hey, I know this isn't your fault, but I'm mad. And I get to deal with that a lot as people like, well, I booked at the wrong hotel. I was supposed to book here, and I know this isn't your fault at all. As they're cussing at me, even though they're at the same time apologizing because it's not my fault that they booked at the wrong hotel entirely, and they're just frustrated that they accidentally made a mistake. But again, most people yelling at themselves doesn't feel good and doesn't help them feel any better about anything. But yelling at a person at least relieves some of that stress. So something I'm used to in the 10 years of hospitality I've been doing. But yeah, people like to have a singular, visible human target whenever possible.
Yeah, that's what it was like when everything was shut down and my store was open. Customers were rude and mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So after number 5, any life events or anything before number 6? Anything major that changed? Any dynamic changes to family or lifestyle or anything like that?
Um, I can't think of much except for the older ones saw that I treated number 5 differently, but I treat my children according to who they are and what they need.
Mhm.
And I cannot hold them responsible for information that I don't know they don't understand. I need to know they understand something before I can hold them responsible for it.
Can you explain that a different way?
Mm.
Sorry,
Well, if I tell you what I want and you don't understand it,
uh,
then I can't hold you responsible for that information to act accordingly or um
so what you're saying is that the oldest four didn't understand why you were treating number 5 differently than you treated all of them because you understood more about what number 5 needed than they did, but to them it just seemed
and
getting a different treatment.
well, and there's other things too that society was also changing and less tolerant of different forms of discipline. So the discipline changed a little bit because I didn't until I knew that number five understood. I couldn't hold him responsible. And then when I did, that had to be just a little bit different because society had different ideas.
Okay.
And I tried to be the same in public as private.
Mhm.
Uh, so
Okay.
I tried to be consistent.
Yeah. Okay. So there was a little bit of hey, why aren't you doing the exact same thing
Why are you
through?
treating him different?
Right. Yeah. Okay. And then anything else before number six that you can think of relevant?
Not really.
Okay. So let's go on to number six. Um, anything different with number? Well, first gap between uh, five and six.
From 95 to 97. That's a little more than 2 years. 2.5 years.
2.5. Okay. So 2.5 years. So hold on. Just trying to recap in my brain. So now you have a 2.5-year-old. You have a 9-year-old. Hold on. 2.5.
88 to 97. 9.
And
Yeah.
then you said 16 months. So it's a 9-year-old.
Well,
A sorry, I'm trying to
it's
give an
easier to
idea.
do the years than it is to do the gaps.
Yes, but I don't know how my
86.
audience does that, but I
Okay,
know.
11.
Okay.
11 for number 3.
Mhm. And then 4 years, that'd be 15 for the
And
twins.
81 to 97. 16.
So, so,
Almost 16.
so you have so one and two are 16,
Almost.
almost 16. Then you have your 11-year-old, your 9-year-old, and then your 2.5-year-old, and
Mm-hmm.
then infant.
Mm-hmm.
Anything different about number six? Or did it kind of go back to more normal?
Yeah. Um, so for him, I had a doula.
What's
She
a doula? For people that don't might not know what that is, what is a
Well,
doula?
I was getting there.
Okay.
She worked with a friend of mine that's a midwife, and a doula is there for comfort and support. And like my friend that was with me for number five, to be an advocate. So my
Okay.
my doula, we can this one was born on the due date. Um, I kind of felt like there might have been some contractions, so we walked around the block and nothing was happening. So she went home,
Mm,
and this is before cell phones.
mhm.
Uh, when I knew that was really happening, I called her, and she wasn't home, and it was her birthday, so she was celebrating her birthday.
Gotcha.
Uh, so I called another friend. Um, and she has 6 children, but did she have all 6 yet? Maybe. Anyway, she came and had a midwife in the hospital.
Mhm.
Uh, I think the perfect midwife for that situation. I was offered a home birth. I wanted a home birth because birth comes easy to me. I mean, not like labor is a breeze, but
You've
but
had some practice.
all my well, the first labor was the hardest because I didn't know what to do.
Mhm. And there's
And
also twins.
well, I didn't know how things were going to be, so
You didn't have expectations.
I I went to Lamaze classes so my husband could be in the room with us. And being a mechanic, they looked at his hands and they said, "Go wash your hands." I did. He went and washed them again and showed them. See, and so. Uh,
You're talking about number six of the birth, and then you were talking
Well, the
about how.
labors, well, the first labor I was not prepared for because I tried doing all this silly Lamaze breathing and
Mhm.
it wasn't helpful. But before number three, I I got this book, Childbirth Without Fear by Dr. Grantley Dick Reed. And when I read that book, oh, that made all the difference. So
Gotcha.
that number three, um, my mother-in-law was in the room and when number three was born, and she said, "That is the most beautiful thing I ever saw." It was just such a very peaceful delivery,
Mhm.
and that's because I was using the, the philosophy and the methods of Dr. Grantley Dick Reed. And so whenever I have a friend or someone special that's pregnant and getting ready for birth, I'll tell them you need to read this book because birth is a natural function of a woman's body
Yeah.
and it shouldn't hurt like people think it does. They call them labor pain when it just should be labor contractions.
Mhm.
You contract your muscle to do a pull up or a push up or to swing an axe or something like that. That doesn't hurt unless you do it wrong. And so that's the premise of the book.
Gotcha.
So from there on, all the deliveries were really easy. For number six, I had back labor,
Okay.
and I don't like to be touched in labor.
Mhm.
But my friend, she put her hand on my back for the back labor, and it wasn't until later when I was looking back at it, wasn't it wasn't the pressure that made the difference. It was that her hand was cold.
Oh,
That's what made the difference. And the reason
good
I
or bad difference?
good difference.
Okay, so
Cold.
cold hand was okay.
Her cold hand is what helped the back labor feel better.
Okay.
And and the head would start to come out with the labor and with the push, and then they would go back in and out, in, out, in, out. Well, the cord was wrapped around his neck,
Ah,
so the midwife pulled the cord out, clamped it, and clipped it, and number four was praying for his sister,
yeah.
praying
Because
for his
now it's
sister,
been
praying for his sister.
7, 8, 9.5 years, almost 10 years. Because 7 years between 4 and 5.
86 to 88, yeah, nine years,
Yeah.
nine
So
and a half.
almost 10 years of waiting for a sister.
Well, when she was a baby, she didn't know she was waiting for her sister. But
Sure.
anyway, yeah, she'd been waiting for her sister and praying for her sister and praying for her sister. And this one was another boy.
I bet that went really well with her.
He also had the biggest head,
Oh,
and the hand was on the cheek, which was part of why there was back labor, is because there are two presenting parts.
mm,
Um, yeah, so she cried a bucket of tears again.
mhm.
No, girl. I always wanted my children in pairs. I grew up with two pairs. There's a gap between us. Two girls, a gap, and two more girls. And we had our buddy, and I always wanted my children in pairs. So now we're paired up again. And
So now you have a 2.5-year-old and an infant. What family dynamic changes happened there?
I don't think a lot changed.
Okay.
Um, I don't think so. I mean, I had the helpers and they all, excuse me, loved on number six. Um, our 7-passenger vehicle, we had to get creative in the belting.
Mhm.
The 2-passenger seat, we squeezed the car seat in the middle.
Things are getting tight in the car. Um, Getting creative with trying to make sure everybody fits.
Hmm. Everybody did fit.
Mhm.
Uh, I can't think of much that changed. Um, Fortunately, number 5 was finally sleeping someplace other than our bed and sleeping through the night just in time for number 6 to be born.
Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. So now you got your infant. Anything different with number 6 opposed to everybody else? Not really.
Um, no, I think we just kind of carried on.
Okay. And then anything between 6 and 7? Anything significant with
Well,
changes?
we did move. Um, my parents wanted to sell the house that we were renting,
Okay.
so we moved. And we knew that this was going to be just a temporary move, so we didn't bother emptying all the boxes. We were only going to
Sure.
be there for a year,
Okay.
and and then also, oh yeah, see, the first 2 went to college.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
That's right. The
are
first
they
2 went
about
to
that
college.
age?
Uh, well, when they were in college, they had 3 different home addresses because we started in one place and then we moved to this holding house for a little over a year, and then we moved again. Um,
How old
I was just
is
thinking about this
six?
trip, huh?
How old was number 6 when 1 and 2 went to college?
They went to college in '99,
And
and so he was 2. Yeah, and we moved while I was pregnant with number 7.
okay,
Um, so they went to college,
so
but I want to back up to a
okay,
trip.
okay,
I gotta remember what the trip was. Oh, yeah. Um, yeah, when number 6 was 2 years old, we went cross country to Wisconsin uh, to visit my sister who just had identical twin boys too.
oh, okay,
And I only took the girl, number 4, and the 2-year-old. And number 1 and 2 were taking care of the family at home while I was gone, and my husband was at work. So I knew they could handle the house.
mhm,
Um, then I questioned that I left my 4-year-old in the hands of teenagers, but they're very responsible boys,
mhm.
very responsible. I think they're born that way. But yeah, number 3 and number 5 were not that big a deal. But then number 3 always has stories about what happened to him, and I have number 4 argues about those stories. He's got a different view of life too.
Gotcha.
Um, Interesting. But anyway, we went cross country and we were gone for a few weeks. Yeah. So
Okay.
4-year-old was home. Uh, 1 and 2 worked at the church, and one had the early shift and then came home for lunch, and the other one would go to work for the afternoon shift.
Okay.
Something like that. They'll probably correct me if they hear this. Um, yeah, we did that.
All right.
Anyways, pregnant with number 7 when we moved to a holding house. Oh yeah, I've got to go back to the home birth idea because I wanted a home birth. And the midwife, said about the doula. The midwife, um, she, well, she offered when I was pregnant with number 5, but I couldn't see paying insurance and a midwife separately. We couldn't afford to do that. Number 6 was due in August, and where we live is so temperate and no air conditioning that, and our bedroom's like 8 feet away from the sidewalk. I thought home birth in the summer. I don't want someone walking by and hearing my labor sounds and wondering what's going on in there. So, no,
Mm.
and all the bedrooms face the street because it's a corner house. So that wasn't going to work. She offered to do it for free, and then the next house just it wasn't really very workable either. So we were at the holding house when when we had number 7.
Okay.
And
Go ahead.
um, I'm thinking about this picture when we moved. I'm sorry, going back.
It's okay.
I'm thinking about this picture because after we emptied out the house, the upper closet, there's 2 doors, the lower closet and the upper closet. And the upper closet was empty and it was huge. And number 5 and 6 were having a little tea party up there. And I got a picture, but and I don't know where it is. I bet you number 8 has uncovered it somewhere because he likes to turn things around. But anyway, um, it's a favorite picture that's at least it's in my head.
Mhm.
It's in my head.
Yeah.
So going back to number 7,
Mhm.
different hospital.
Hospital. Anything different with childbirth itself?
The childbirth.
Or-
Um, my doula was there,
Okay.
and and pretty much they just left me alone because this is number 7. They had my child, my birth plan, and they could see that uh, she'll be okay. So my doula was there, and the nurses weren't, and yeah, my water broke, which it happens.
Mhm.
And I was handling contractions just fine, and felt like my water broke again. My doula said, "Well, let's look under the covers." We looked under the covers. Oh, look, there's a baby. That was too easy.
You're like, oops, I just gave birth.
Yeah, it was too easy.
Okay.
And
So, now, okay, so gap between 6 and 7. What's the gap between 6 and 7?
from 97 to 2000 is 3 years.
Okay, so that means number 4, between number 4 and number 7 is
From 88 to 2000 is 12
12. Okay.
and a half.
Okay, so 12 and a half years.
Mhm.
Was number 4 now happy or no? Or is this
Well,
another bucket of tears?
Well,
Those buckets are running out of buckets now.
well, she's been praying for her sister, and we told her what color we had. She cried again. Buckets and more buckets of
So
tears.
another boy.
She had a sister.
Oh, so happy tears this time.
Happy
Okay.
tears. I have a picture that got uncovered by number eight. And I think I put it in a safe place, but I'm not sure what a safe place is for number eight. But anyway, I have a picture of her with red, teary eyes holding her sister. She's in a big old smile. She finally got her sister.
That's good.
And it didn't take long for me to see that this one had Down syndrome.
Okay.
And
Really quick. What is Down syndrome?
Down syndrome, the the other name is trisomy 21, which means there's three copies of the 21st chromosome. And in this case, more information is not better. It's not more is better. But you know what? As this one is now going to be 25 this year, I'll make number four cry again. She cried when she turned 20. My sister's 20. Boo.
Yeah.
Anyway, uh, I had friends that had children with Down syndrome, and I had wondered how they could treat their treat that child as normal, and I found out you just treat them as normal. That's it. They take
Well,
care of their needs,
yeah.
whatever they are.
Based on what you've told me about your parenting style, that still is it is different, but it's no the gap is not any bigger between how you treated them than any other of your children. You treat them according to their needs specifically, but not any special way. It's your normal level of assessing the child and figuring out what they need.
Yeah, yeah, and this uh, half half of the people born with Down syndrome have a heart defect, and the most common defect is AV canal, which means that you have four chambers in the heart, and there's a dividing wall called a septum, and that septum is missing, or there's just holes between the two upper chambers, which are the atria, and there's a hole between the two bottom chambers, which are the ventricles, and that would be AV canal. In this case, uh, the valves, there's no septum between the that valve, so that there's one common valve. So the blood flow with every heartbeat was mixing in all four chambers.
Oh,
So usually you have a tricuspid valve. That means there's three leaflets that open and close as the heart pulses. And the mitral valve has two leaflets that pulse with the beating of the heart.
mhm.
And so often mostly the common valve has five leaflets. And then when they do surgery, they divide that valve. So you get three leaflets on one side, two on the other.
Mhm.
And the surgeon said his goal was to make two reasonably functioning valves, which means it's not perfect.
Mhm.
And when they got in there, they found only four leaflets. So she still has a heart defect.
Gotcha.
Um, that was
So,
that was a lot of
so
work
she had open heart surgery,
in 8 months.
8 months old. That could not have been fun. for
Uh,
anybody. We don't have to talk about that any more than you.
the two hardest days of my life were when she had her surgery, and then later that year my sister died.
Yeah, that must not have been a very easy year for you at all.
Yeah, surgery out, and yeah, so the heart surgery that was. I remember carrying her. We parked the car and we're walking in. And I'm carrying her, and I just felt every footstep closer to the hospital got heavier and heavier.
Yeah.
And handing her over for surgery
Hmm.
was very hard.
Yeah.
And she always does better than the tests and observations show. And she she's done very well.
I see. Well, fortunately, people don't need to guess if she's made it because she's turning 25 this year. So,
Yep,
uh,
yep. Yeah, and I got to tell you about the surgeon because the surgeon I didn't realize was world known. Um, and we went in for the pre-op visit, and I had my daughter in the front pack, and I had the diaper bag backpack, and then my husband came from work, and of course he's a mechanic, and he changes clothes, but the shoes just
mhm,
anyway. He came from work, so he was as clean as he was gonna be.
mhm.
And after we had the conversation with the surgeon, we were walking out, and I looked down. I said, "Hey, your shoe's untied." And my husband started to bend over, and the surgeon bent over and said, "Let me tie it."
Well,
That says a lot about his personality.
because I don't know anybody, any acquaintance that I've ever had that would be willing to do that for me, much less somebody that is well below pay grade. Um,
Well, he had my husband had the backpack on, and his arms were kind of full, and he just bent over, and the surgeon bent over and said, "Let me get that for you,"
well,
and tied his filthy work shoes.
yeah,
And that's probably the highest recommendation
yeah, absolutely,
because he's a humble man.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, anyway, I
Okay,
just had to go back to that. So,
absolutely. Um, okay, so heart surgery goes well. Um,
well,
how
what they don't tell you is that 20% of the children going on the heart lung bypass have seizures.
oh
And they don't tell you that until it happens.
oh
So she had seizures after the surgery. So they put her on medicine,
mm,
and she did okay with that for a while, and then she was throwing it up, and she was throwing up a lot, and a lot of the her milestones that she had made, oh yeah. Anyway, a lot of milestones she had made, she was losing abilities and throwing up. And this is November, so her surgery was in May, and this is November. And the doctor, her pediatrician, said, "Well, before your next visit in January, we'll do some blood tests." And I said, "Well, I'm going to be in the area tomorrow.
mm,
We can do those blood tests."
mm.
And so we did the blood test, and then when he got the results, he called me and said, "Oh, she needs to be in the hospital right now
Oh.
because her labs are just so bad." She wasn't sure what they could do, and I said, "Well, I can't go right now. My husband is out of town, and I need somebody here to take care of my children before I can go take her to the hospital."
Mhm.
So my mother-in-law came. She's always had my back.
Mhm.
I miss her.
Yeah.
I knew that my children could take care of the house. I had trained them. They were responsible. They could do it. I just needed to know that there would be uh, a cool head in case something happened in the middle of the night, an emergency. My mother-in-law would know what to do and could make the right decision.
Right.
So she was there as backup.
Mm.
That's kind of like when I went to Missouri to watch 6 grandchildren over there.
Mhm.
Um, those children can run the house.
It's
Yeah,
just in case of emergency,
that's
you
right.
know.
Well, actually, it's also for discipline for the 2-year-old.
Okay. Well, there's that too.
but but yeah, so my mother-in-law came up, and I told the doctor we have been after this for a couple months now, for weeks anyway. So
Mhm.
this is stable. We just have to wait till tomorrow. I can't leave right now.
Mhm.
So we left the next day, and the attending doctor, you learn all the attending is the one who's in charge, and then you've got the residents and the fellows and all that.
Right.
And I learned a whole lot about that because of being in a teaching hospital
Mhm.
for cardiology. So I learned all that stuff, and I learned how to speak medical, so they think I'm a nurse when I ask them questions. And I get a lot better answers too. Um,
Makes
so,
sense.
huh?
If you speak the lingo, I mean, again, going back to hospitality, when people start using the word folio instead of receipt, I know that they're more well traveled, because folio is the technical term for your whole everything you spent, not just like the room rate or anything like that. Like, yes, it technically you can turn into layman in terms of receipt, but folio is all the different charges that go to your room, whether it's food or stuff like that. But that folio is not something that most people use.
Oh no.
Exactly. Like, there's certain terminologies that are used that when I hear it, I'm like, okay, so here's what I can explain to you now. Because I know you understand at least this, I can explain to you a little bit better about what's going on, because I don't want to sit there explaining something about to somebody that's like sitting there and then they're like eyes go like glaze over, going, "What are you talking about?"
Well, I have to tell you, it's going backward just a little bit.
Uh,
I, I'm not sure it's going backwards or forwards. I forget what order it is because, oh, I'm not sure. I don't remember.
it's okay.
It's in a book somewhere that I wrote it down.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so the neurologist, I know I'm going backwards. Okay, let's just go forward. So the attending doctor looks at the labs
Mm,
first. Meanwhile, my daughter is sitting in the crib playing.
mm,
She's happy. She's just playing in the crib. And when the attending doctor comes in, because she's looking at the labs before and thinking, what can we do for her? I don't know what we can do. Because according to the lab, she's almost dead. Oh,
Oh,
that's how they saw it.
yeah.
They're like, what can we do? Is how
Blood work is looking like you've got a frail child that is barely hanging on to life.
well, I don't know, but the way that she said, "Oh, we have something to work with," she didn't know what she could do for her, and then she saw her, and then she said, "Oh, okay, we got something we can work with." So, uh, I'm inferring by what she
Sure,
said.
you kind
She
of got
does better.
the idea that they did not have a very good outlook of things based off of blood work itself, but
Yeah,
when I
she was a great
observe,
doctor. Great doctor. She was a mother without children.
gotcha.
She was she was very good, and so we did what we needed to. She she built up her blood work. They gave her different supplements and different medications and balancing. They were giving her iron through an NG tube and bicarbonate of soda. And I was looking at the NG tube and it's precipitating. What does that mean? It's kind of coagulating in the tube.
Mhm.
And I told the nurse, I don't think these two should be going in together because they're reacting in the tube.
Yeah,
So from then on, they separated it. But I don't leave my children. If they're in the hospital, I'm there.
yeah,
Well, well, I'm going to go backwards a little bit.
that's okay.
When my twins were little, one of them got a hernia, and he was 2 months old. Yeah, right around Christmas, and when he had his hernia repair, and I had to choose between staying home with one or being in the hospital with the other.
Mhm.
So I had milk frozen in the freezer that I left with the nurse in the hospital. But if I were to do it now, I would go the other way.
I would say I would go with the one in the hospital, but
Yeah, I would too, but I was 22 at the time
anyway,
and hadn't uh
had the experience.
yeah,
Yeah,
I had that was my first experience. So yeah.
gotcha. Yeah, 2 months. I got, yeah, 2 months. You've been a parent for 2 months of trying to make decisions about how to handle two different individuals that you can't just
I have to leave one.
right. Yeah. So okay, but okay.
So
So going back to number 7, you're with her as they're going through all these things.
yeah, I think she was in the hospital for 9 days.
Okay. What would, if you don't mind sharing, what was the actual issue? Like,
Acute kidney failure.
oh, so
So
open heart surgery and then kidney failure shortly after.
yeah. My theory is that the phenobarbital that they were giving her, I didn't remember the name earlier, phenobarbital for the seizures, she was throwing that up. And when you throw up, you lose more liquid than you are taking in.
Mhm.
And I think that all that throwing up was led to dehydration, which led to acute kidney failure.
Gotcha.
So so she wasn't doing well with the medicine.
Right.
And I think that might be what comes next. I think that might become what next after they get her blood work normal again, normalize her blood work so that she's got the electrolytes and she's got I mean baking soda is one of them. Um and and she's looking good again.
Mhm.
I think we had to see the neurologist to make sure she could be off the phenobarbital because she was on that for a long time and it was a liquid and she was throwing it up. Uh, so we had to go see the no, no, the neurologist was in the hospital. The neurologist was in the hospital after the surgery. That must be it. Okay, because we were in the hospital and one way or another, yeah, it's after surgery, after they did the EEG and then he was he was telling me the results of the EEG and what they wanted to do. That's right. And my mother-in-law was there for the EEG, not me. They were supposed to call me, but anyway, um, when the neurologist came in, by now I had learned how to speak medical. And when the first question I asked, he answered in a very hedgy way. So then I spoke his language, and maybe perhaps could it be? And so that way he's not making a promise.
Yeah.
He's not saying what is.
Yeah.
And he, after we talked, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, as I'm asking, what does this mean? What do we need to do? And asking about prognosis and whatever other questions I had. And at this time I'm 40, so I know a little better. Um, so I'm asking questions in a very hedgy way, like I said. Could this possibly be? Maybe. And
Right.
and after he left, the PICU nurse looked at me and said, "You got more information out of him than I've ever heard." Well, I spoke his
Yeah.
language.
Yeah. I mean, it's very helpful. It's something that's helped me, like learning lingo of different areas.
Well, not necessarily a lingo.
Well, it is though. I mean, if you like, again, my area of expertise is hospitality, and if someone says, I'll give a much smaller example, but it's like, oh, can I check in early today? I never promise an early check-in unless they are going to pay extra for that early check-in but what I can tell them is like, well, most of the time, if you show up early, that's your best bet for getting into a room early before check-in time. Why? Because if I promise, yes, you can, and then we don't have rooms ready yet, then we owe the guest extra, you know, and that's just a room. In the medical field, if you say, "Oh, this is it," and then you start making decisions off of, well, the doctor said, that can be life or death. And so you want to be very careful in any industry that you are only giving solid answers if you can actually back up those solid answers with things. But
Well, another example of knowing the language. It's come across quite a few times, but the last one I remember is when my husband went in for a procedure, and and they wanted to sedate him. I said, "Well, you don't need sedation for this. It does not. There's really no pain involved here, so I don't know why they're sedating you." And then he he asked if he could have something of s-
like
something less,
localized,
huh?
like, oh, less. I was gonna say
Or something
localized, like
something
localized
different.
anesthetic.
A- And and they called me in to talk because I'm the one that did the research and said, this shouldn't be a painful procedure. And and I said, well, could you use less? Oh, well, this is what's in his order, that he has to have this medicine because it's in his order. I said, well, can you start can you start low and titrate it? And at first she said, uh, well, we've got to do this. But later during the procedure, uh, my husband relayed to me later that the doctor whispered to the anesthesiologist, "Hey, start light and you can titrate this." But that was a word that
So for my audience out there, what is titrating?
okay because okay, I'll start with a word that's not the opposite of titrate, which is bolus. Bolus is when you just give it to them.
Okay.
It'd be like in a bag that just gives it all,
Okay.
or a shot. You just
Uh-huh.
give it all. But that wasn't. It was an IV. So titrate is to adjust it according to the need.
Okay.
So that's layman's terms. They're probably
Sure.
both of those, the bolus and titrate, is my understanding of it. Because at one point, because of the issues that my daughter had, we did bolus feeding, which meant it was NG tube, a nasal tube goes down to the stomach, and it was on a pump, and that was a bolus feed would be just to hang a bag and just let it free fall through the tube into the stomach or wherever you want.
Mm-hmm.
So bolus is like all at once, and titrate is to adjust it.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm sure there's a better definition, but
Sure. Probably somewhere out there.
so anyway, so
That's good enough for my own sake, I feel like.
but using their language and in the right way helps. One special thing about number 5 is that he didn't really talk. None of my children talked early, and they were kind of slow to start talking. And number 5 was really slow to start talking, and but he started talking when he was 3,
Mhm.
and he spoke like a 5-year-old. And he would hear a word in conversation and use it almost immediately in context. And when I said, "I think someday you'll be a writer," he answered, "I think I would like that."
How old?
I don't know, but it was less than 5.
Not, I don't know many people at 20 that would respond that way.
I'm not sure if that's quite a direct quote. It was 25 years ago or so,
Yeah,
but that's how formal the language was.
gotcha. Um, so anything else with number 7?
Oh, yeah. Um, okay, so with Down syndrome, they want to get you into early intervention and and teach them how to do all these things. And I really thought that the best way to teach her was to let her teach herself, just like every other child.
Mm-hmm.
It might take longer, but that means she is discovering it and she's building the pathways, the brain pathways, and connecting everything herself so they're stronger. She can figure it out. And uh, well, she crawled late, but that's okay. And she did walk even, oh golly, yeah, there's some of the books I was reading back then. Oh, they should have been burned or put in a museum, and books about Down syndrome, about expectations.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
well, I mean, that was early 2000s.
Yeah.
There's not, I know that generally speaking, mental health of any sort was not in a good spot in the early 2000s. They didn't have a lot of material about most things that were really well researched.
Well, the 70s was probably when they started saying, "Oh yeah, take them home." But before that, it was, "Well, just put them in an institution, go have another baby." That's what they told my grandma when she had a son with Down syndrome. They said, "Oh, just institutionalize him and go have another baby."
Wow.
And that was back in the 40s,
Yeah.
and she did not.
Mm.
She kept him. She
That's
kept him as long as she could, but in World War II, Grandpa was in the Navy, and she had to work and all the circumstances. She did try
yeah.
for 2 years. She did try, and then he was given to the state. But that the 70s, the 70s was turning around.
Yeah.
things are turning around in the 70s where people born with disabilities were staying home with the parents.
Yeah.
And then often still happens today that as they get into adulthood, the parents are, oh, I'm done being a parent, and they put them into facilities.
Yeah.
But the facilities are more family-like now than they were before, but still,
But yeah, but I know that there's a lot of research. I've done a lot of research into the various disabilities and learning disabilities and mental health things, and there's a lot of stuff that like only like you like 2010 or so is starting. The research has been actually for the benefit of those with the different either disabilities or mental disorders and stuff like that. Where a lot of the times it's well, they're just not okay. Anyway, moving on. It's like, well, wait, what? It's like, yeah, they're not okay. Just leave them. It's like, okay, what about them? Well, we'll be fine without them. No, what about them?
yeah, my my mother-in-law is the one that found the connections for me, online communities, and I keep going sideways, but everything's all connected. There was a Yahoo group for supporting parents of children with Down syndrome and heart defects.
Well,
Um, and she found that group for me. Now, at this time, number one and two were in college, and I still marvel that the two of them, they went to the same college, they had the same friends, um, and their friends marveled that I knew how to use a computer. And I said, why don't you just stop with me? Why don't you tell them that your grandma knows how to program them? And that's the other grandma.
I was gonna say,
She knows how to program them. The other one uses them for work, and she's 10 years older even.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say, is like I was kind of internally chuckling because I know what you're talking was important, but I was like dating the computer use of Yahoo groups because that's not a real thing anymore.
That was in 2000.
I know. Well, I'm like today the equivalent would be like a Facebook group of people or whatever, but like back then it was Yahoo. Yahoo had Yahoo Answers, Yahoo Mail, Yahoo Chats. Like it was just after like AOL kind of was not as big of a deal anymore. But
Your
but
grandma still has AOL.
I as someone that has to input a lot of email addresses, I'm still impressed with how many people still have an AOL email address. And I'm like, there's, I know that like once you have an email address, you don't really want to get rid of it. But also, like, there's better email services. But on the other side, also chuckling at, I don't know how many other grandmas in 2010 were finding Yahoo groups.
2000.
Yeah, sorry, 2000
2000.
2000 were finding Yahoo groups to help their what,
She was
daughter-in-law.
70.
Yeah,
She was 70 when
yep.
she found that.
No, but I don't know how many other grandmas were finding groups on the internet to help their in-law, their daughter-in-law.
I told you,
You
she
know,
she always had my back.
yeah. No, I was trying to let you get through that because
Yeah.
what you're saying was important, and
Oh, you
but
mean your audience might be too young to know what a Yahoo group is?
I don't know. I unfortunately don't have as many statistics on who my audience is as I would like, but I know that the amount of people on this planet that are going, you mean like Yahoo email? Because that's just email and news, right? Not, oh yeah, Yahoo Answers, Yahoo Groups, Yahoo Instant Messaging. Yeah, that was a wild time in the internet.
Well,
Before Yahoo
hey,
was owned by
hey,
Verizon.
you want to go back a little further? The CompuServe and the email addresses were numbers.
Oh, geez.
And when you wanted to save something on the computer, you had 8 characters for the name, and that's it.
Yeah,
On a
but
floppy disk,
you mean the save button on computers?
the floppy disk.
No, but I did want to just. I know,
The
and I
3.5 inch floppy.
yeah,
And then we got to the smaller one.
yeah. But I wanted to let you get through what you were saying as an important part of the story before I went back, and it's kind of funny but also impressive. Like, you know, our family is well, most of our family and my family and your family are both tech advanced. We both use technology, uh, and it's just as like I said, your in-law was giving you advice and pointing you towards groups that can be helpful back in 2000 online. You know, other grandmas programming. Um, but it's just
Yeah.
back when computers weren't something that everybody used. Certain demographics were using computers. Older generations weren't necessarily using them. They were like, those newfangled things.
Oh, that
But
grandma was sharp and
mhm,
sharp. Oh, it past 90. She
yeah,
was sharp.
but,
Even with Alzheimer's, I'd walk in the room, she'd call me by name. And my brothers-in-law, you have to introduce yourself every time. I must have been special because she knew who I was every time.
yeah. Um, but anyway, so you were introduced to other people in similar
Around
circumstances.
the world,
Yeah,
Singapore, Isle of Man. Most of it is based in England. This group was based in
gotcha.
England.
Okay,
So it's mostly English speakers. So,
okay,
and we would share stories back and forth and how the surgeries were going. So we got information. We were learning the lingo, like you
sure.
said,
Yeah,
back and forth. We were learning it and what to expect, what questions to ask, and and things like that.
okay. Okay, so a lot of learning with number seven. A lot of learning,
And
lot of
letting her learn for
right.
herself. And I have to, uh, my sister-in-law, I call her that because she's the wife of my brother-in-law. So that's another marriage to get to her.
Sure.
Um, she's a special ed teacher,
Okay.
and she referred me to her friend who was special ed for preschool. And so we met with her a couple times, and they both approved of my method, which is really not much at all. Offer opportunities and let them teach themselves. And
Well, as someone that is uh, going to be having an infant shortly, um, any day now, actually, you'd be surprised at how many videos are popping up and talking about different parenting methods and how and the let them figure it out themselves is something that is still a method versus like how many parents have learned the hard way that that is a good method of teaching is let them learn. That's how I've taught myself. I mean, through my life, I have taught myself how to do a lot of things by myself. I mean, podcasting is something that it was started by somebody else, like, hey, we should do this thing. And then as questions came up, I'm like, I'll figure it out. So I figured out how to host what a podcast hosting site was. I figured out what an RSS feed was. I figured out how to make sure that it was getting to the different podcatchers like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Apple Music and Stitcher and all these different places. And I learned how to make sure that you can like all these things I learned how to do because I was given the opportunity to discover things by myself. And so as I get older, as people look at me and go, Joel, why in the world do you know how to pick a lock? It's like, because I saw it enough times that I was like, okay, it can't be as easy as I see in TV. So how does it work? How do locks work? Okay, well locks work like this. Well, okay. And so I bought myself a lockpick set on Amazon with a clear lock, and now I have a professional lockpick set that I carry where it is legal to carry it. Oddly enough, off topic, But really random thing is if I'm ever happen to be passing near a crime scene, I cannot have a lockpick set because it is a misdemeanor to have a lockpick set in an active crime scene. Even if you have nothing to do with the crime scene, if you're an observer that happens to have a lockpick set on them, it is a misdemeanor. I'm like,
We're going to go chase that rabbit?
no, it was one of the weird things that as I was learning about lockpicking, I was looking at what are the legal limits of what I can do with this. When can I use it? When can't I use it? And one of the random things that came up is like, just make sure if you ever happen to be near a crime scene that you don't have your lockpicks around you. But anyway, but like my friends go, or coworkers even go, why do you know how to do this? Like, because I figured it out at some point in my life, because I was taught to, like, I mean, my whole podcast, Curious Joel, let my curiosity go and figure out where things go. Um, but you'd be surprised how many parents are finding that out on kid 2 or 3 or whatever, of, well, after going through these different parenting methods on this one, I'm gonna just kind of let them figure it out. And it's like, yep. But so you might not think of it as a parenting style or a big deal, but to a lot of people, even today, that is something that they are taking the long way around to discover for themselves.
I guess that kind of takes me back a little bit uh, to I did do some child development study when I was representing Discovery Toys. And so I read a lot of different philosophies back then to help sell the toys. Basically, I like teaching much more than the selling.
Sure,
I think I lost money on that because I don't like to close the deal because if I ask, they might say no.
sure.
So anyway, I don't like to sell,
Mm,
but I do like to teach.
right.
That you talk about passion and if I have to, you can objects of passion I already gave you,
Mm,
but doing passion is teaching and making. So I love teaching. So when I was doing Discovery Toys, I was reading about reading Piaget and the uh, other different child development people, and I learned a lot about the cycles, like the odd number years and the even number years, kind of go this way and that way, and one of my daughters-in-law noticed that all my grandchildren, they at one point in the year will be all odd number, and then throughout the year they all flip to the even number,
mm,
and there's characteristics of the odd numbers and the even numbers that are pretty interesting,
mm.
where
You're
one
talking about like ages specific, like so
ages,
10
yeah,
versus
like
11,
the
12
two-year
versus
old, the
13.
4-year old, the 6-year old, the 8-year old, but what about the 3, the 5, and the 7?
Right. Okay.
And
I wasn't sure
yeah,
if I missed something
yeah.
or if
So
it was.
it's interesting how the child goes through a 2-year cycle, and all my grandchildren are going through the same cycle together.
Gotcha.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I learned a lot of things by doing that. It wasn't the purpose of it, it was so I could sell the toys,
Right.
um, but I learned a lot. And you have to have and other things I've just kind of learned on anyways, but
Sure.
you have to have a basic knowledge, and then you can build on that. And then from there you can build some more, and then there's the coordination, and like so many parents will say, "Oh, my child, he's just so stupid, he can't read yet." Well, but everybody develops their dexterity differently and different,
Mm,
and the motor skills down to fine motor skills. The last fine motor skill to develop is eye tracking, tracking a line and reading. And that's something I saw when I was teaching number 3 how to read, that he was just going along just fine, da, 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 everything's fine. And then all of a sudden we got to this lesson, he couldn't read anymore. He couldn't read it. And I couldn't figure out, well, what? And he also is the one that has the off switch. I don't know where it is. And he certainly wouldn't expose his on switch. He would just off and there was no getting him back. Um, I think he was the first one to puddle on the floor. I mean, he would just become a puddle on the floor where he's done. Now what? Um, and I looked back at the book and looked at it, and that's where the letters got smaller.
Oh, okay.
They were big. The letters are big, 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 big. And then that lesson is where the letters got smaller and he couldn't track anymore.
Gotcha.
So I got him a large print Bible and I made sure that everything he had was large print so he could read.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these little things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that in my development, I just growing up, feeling feeling out of place in my age group because I developed certain things like the questions that I was asking were not in my age range. And as my peers were what at the moment felt like a little slow and just I couldn't get along with them super well. Like if we were playing tag, great, but like I couldn't sit down and talk with them because they weren't they had very small picture minds still. And my mind was going on to bigger picture things and I'm going, I can't discuss anything deep with you because you haven't developed that side of things yet. And it
Does
was
your audience know where you're placed in your family?
I've talked fairly extensively about my family and um like I said I've had
So being homeschooled and having older siblings kind of brings you up a little faster.
well, yeah I've talked about that a little bit. I think I've talked about that a little bit. I know I talk about a lot in my life of I've always and this is how I interpret this best for other people, and I don't necessarily see it as a competition exactly, but when I was doing anything, it was with people that were my older siblings' friends, and I was keeping up with kids that were 9 years older than me, you know. And so when I played tag, I didn't play tag at my level. I played tag at their level. You know, that was true for most of my childhood years up until like right around high school or like the beginning of high school or so, where I was still hanging out with my older siblings' friends. So when they did something, I had to be at an understanding of where they were at and be because if I wasn't, I was a burden. If I wasn't, I was slowing them down. Come on, Joel, you can just like so to prevent that, I was participating in things with people that were much faster, much smarter. Well, uh, like their strategies were more developed, their muscles were more developed, but I was doing my best to keep up with them and to surpass them, so that I wasn't slowing anybody down. Um, so
There's
yeah,
more to it than that.
what do you mean?
Well, I going backwards here. Potty training. Um, I just remember, oh, twins, they turned two, a time to potty train. And so we we had cloth training pants.
Mhm.
And if they got wet, they had to rinse them out and hang them up. And so 9 months of frustration because they weren't staying dry and it took 9 months. And then at our mother twins club, because that's what you got to do when you got twins, very handy. If you got twins, mother twins club, very handy. Lots of good information, and also you can hand me down twin things and
Yeah,
equipment and whatever. Anyway, we would introduce ourselves going around, and I would hear, 2 years, 9 months and potty trained, 2 years, 9 months and potty trained, 2 years, 9 months and potty trained. And not every week, but over every month, over and over. I would hear that. So when number three came along at 2 years,
Mm.
I gave him a trial for a week, and that didn't happen. Well, okay, we'll wait. And then we we had some warm weather, and I let him run around in his it was either his nothings or his underpants, I forget. And he trained himself in a week. 2 years, 9 months.
Hmm.
So, okay, it's not a matter of me trying to fit them into a schedule. It is about waiting for them to be ready.
Mm.
And that is another part of my philosophy, waiting till they're ready. You can't force them. And that goes back to teaching number 7.
Mhm.
And that's why I didn't like the idea of early intervention, is because you're doing everything for them. They're not thinking, they're copying.
Yeah.
And you think that, oh, you finally made it. You did, they didn't.
Right.
You're the one that showed them how to do that, and they would have got there probably the same time without you.
Right.
Um, yeah, and um, I see adults that are the same age as number 7, and oh, they speak very well,
Mhm.
but they don't know what to do. They're
Mhm.
in a training program on how to do a job,
Mhm.
and they don't know what to do. They can't see what needs to be done. They just wait for someone to show them.
Right.
They're dependent on somebody else.
Yeah.
And um, my number 2 daughter learned like everybody else.
Mm.
What she sees, she can do.
Right.
And so she sees me doing something, she wants to do it. She sees what I eat, she wants to eat it.
Mhm.
And so she learns by watching and by doing,
Mhm.
not by me doing hand over with her.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's learning for herself. I just remember when she was, I don't know, 2 or so, and she was crawling across these chairs that were in a circle, and she was she crawled across a couple, I think, and then she was going after that next chair, and she kind of tested it. Goes, no, that's too far. I'm not going to do that. And I trust my children to know what is too far. Oh golly, way back when the first 2 were little, and they would walk on the 2-foot brick wall, and the old lady that lived there, down. And I'm thinking in my head, oh, are you going to push them down? Is that a promise? They're fine. And if they fall down, it's on me. You don't say those things,
Right.
but when you project that, oh, you're going to hurt yourself. Well, you can't do that. Well, you're going to fall. You're going to this. You're going to cut yourself. You're going to do that. Well, why are you projecting that?
Yeah.
Now, if it was a clear danger, and I know for sure that the odds, the risk, the the, the risk benefit ratio
Yeah.
is not in their favor,
Yeah.
I can warn them. If I know that absolutely they're going to get hurt, then I'm
Yeah.
taking them out.
I say if it's an unknown danger, if it's something they don't know is dangerous or they have no way of knowing that it's dangerous yet, or
It really depends. I have to look at them. Like when they were two, 2 or 3, 2. Um, I I told them not to climb the fence. It was a chain link fence. Don't climb the fence. And then sometimes I would look out the window and they're climbing the fence, so I'm going to watch them to see how they do it.
Mhm.
And then I can still come out and yell at them, well, you're not supposed to climb up the fence. But I can watch them when they don't see me.
Mhm.
Well, I can check out what their ability level is. And we had at least two rules for climbing trees. I was not allowed to climb trees. I did it anyway, but I was not allowed to climb trees. My rule is the branch has to be as big as your leg. And in that way, the branch is probably strong enough to hold you.
I never followed that rule similar to that. I sorry, you talked about that, and I remember there was a friend's house that I was at that they're telling me that their tree wasn't a climbable tree.
Oh, that's a challenge.
Oh yeah, um, and I know that having a childhood growing up climbing trees all of the time, I usually have a very good sense of branch density depending on the tree type. I can feel the tension and the tensile
Well,
strength
sure,
of
sure.
something. And I remember that because I grabbed one branch because all the branches, I mean, they were pretty small, like, but they were high tensile. It was a high tensile tree. Branches were nice and strong for their size. They looked too small to climb, but they were definitely fine to climb. And there's one that looked like it was just like the others, but I grabbed it, and as I grabbed it, I could feel it was not as sturdy. And as it cracked, I was able to already grab another branch. So it broke, not like, oh no, I'm holding onto this branch that's broken. As I broke as it fell directly down. It didn't even pause in my hand. My hand was on another branch because I learned, by learning. But I learned that these trees have thicker, like more sturdy branches, so they don't need. I know that. And thinking about this now, that actually helped me in my career doing working ropes courses. Of those ropes, some of them don't look like they should be able to hold. Some of those cables don't look like they should be able to hold any amount of weight. But it's like, no, this can literally hold an airline, like an
4 to 10-year-olds need a little guidance.
Sure, but
And so I gave them safety rules.
mm,
And a
so
6-year-old's leg is not very big.
sure. So your two rules, you said one was branch needs to be as thick as your leg, and then what was the other one?
You need permission to climb that tree.
Oh yeah,
Um, Whoever's the owner, that's the one you need to talk to. And so basically in a public park, you don't have anybody else, so you can't get permission.
gotcha,
So those, those are the ones I remember.
gotcha. Um, so I
So anyway, number 7, she knew her limit, and I saw that each one learn their limit. And so anyway,
so
we haven't got to number 8
I was gonna
yet.
say it's this just gonna be us. We're probably gonna have to record a second episode because we're 2 hours in, and we haven't even talked about all the children yet, much less broad strokes parenting and anything like that.
Well,
So 2 hours in, I will. This will be one of the few times that I'll have an opportunity to sit back down and record a part two separately, because I know I'm gonna need to break myself soon, and we're not gonna have a quiet house to record in for much longer. So
we need to get number 8 born.
yes, talked about a little bit before I wrap this episode up and go on.
This one, I think we can find a good spot
All
to
right.
just
So,
for
uh,
number 8.
all right. So, anything else between 7 and 8? Um,
We moved.
okay. So, moved again.
Yeah,
So
we
this is
moved 90 miles away.
okay. That's a big move.
Well, it was the only place we could buy a house.
Sure. I mean,
Well, closest place we could buy a house.
so you have two in college, so that's six-ish. Uh, well, no,
Yeah.
sorry. My math is getting ahead of the story. So you have 5 children at home, and then you have you and your husband. So
Well, kinda. He was living
seven.
with his parents because he was doing a long commute
Okay, so
for
he
4.5 years after we moved
he
up.
still had a job that 90 miles away.
Hmm.
Gotcha. Okay. So
So he was living with his parents most of the week. He'd come home Wednesday and weekends.
gotcha. So you relocated, moved pretty far away, with 5 children, um,
Two in college.
2 in college.
So they didn't really move up with us, but their permanent address did.
Sure, because they didn't have a home, a physical address there anymore. They were living at college at, I
Yeah,
presume,
they were,
dormitories and stuff.
yeah, they were in the dorms and their summer jobs. Uh, one lived with us over this summer, first summer, and one was working at a camp. So anyway, um, yeah. So
Okay, so number 8.
yep,
Anything different about number 8?
number 8. Well, my doula came up on. Oh, let's back up to. You know what? It's 3.5 weeks till due date. I think I better do a little nesting.
Okay.
So I washed all the diapers and all the pajamas and all the clothes and the blankets and stuff.
Mhm.
And I was doing my nesting and and labor started. I could feel it starting. So I called my doula and she was 90 miles away.
Mhm.
We had already done a trial run so she knew how to get to the hospital and she was my ride to the hospital
Mhm.
because husbands in a hurry tend to be lead foot, which means a lot of jerking, and that's not fun in labor.
Sure.
And you go, oh, stop. So that does not feel good. We already did that. Um, so she came up and I wasn't quite ready to go to the hospital. This time I knew I needed to be in the hospital. Um, I didn't know why, but I just knew I needed to be in the hospital for this one.
Okay.
And so the hospital 28 miles away.
Okay.
Uh,
That's a distance.
yeah. Um, that's where the doctors were.
Sure.
And I the hospital reminded me it seemed to be in the same condition and policies as when the first two were born
Mm.
22 years earlier. So I recognize I've seen obstetrics, maternity and obstetrics change
Sorry.
over.
What word did you use? I didn't recognize that one. Obstetrics.
Uh-huh. That's what the OB is.
Okay. Obstetrician. Okay.
And the practice is called obstetrics.
I don't know if I've ever heard it.
Oh, okay. Okay, so
Okay.
their policies and their hospital, their facility and the practice look like
For the
what,
twins.
yeah, 22 years before, 21.5 years.
Sure.
Um, so it looked about the same as back then. I've seen the practices change over time. I had used their practices a little bit over this time,
Hmm.
and I recognized them. I wasn't in a hurry to go to the hospital, but we finally did. I just had this picture. Um, I forget. We took the freeway. There's a little bit of freeway, but mostly it's back roads.
Hmm.
And at one point, you cross the railroad tracks. You go along the freeway and then up and over a hill, and as you come down the hill, you can see the train tracks go through the canyon and up the canyon, and there you are.
Mm,
And I just pictured that we would be sitting at the railroad tracks watching the train go by.
mm,
And that was just something I pictured in my head. And well, my doula drove, and my husband was gonna follow with everybody
mm.
later, or not later. Well, after us anyway.
Yeah.
And it ended
You
up being
left and then get everyone else in the car and head out. But
yeah,
you were the important person that needed to get to the hospital.
yeah. I need to get to the hospital, so um, we're going along, and we go up the hill and down the hill, and I saw a train on the tracks. And okay, well, we'll see. And then we go along the canyon,
Mhm.
and my doula is saying, "Well, you sound like you're in pretty heavy labor."
Oh no.
uh,
Close to the hospital yet or no?
um,
Halfway
3 miles away.
through. Okay. And
Yeah.
did you have to stop for the train or?
No, no, we didn't have to stop, but
Okay.
the baby was born when the car was moving
Oh,
in the canyon.
okay.
His place of birth is a cross street. The name of the canyon and the cross street, because that's the closest spot to put on his birth certificate.
Because in the car wasn't an option.
It was moving. We did pull over, but I'm not sure why we pulled over because we really didn't change anything.
But I feel you'd want to check and make sure that there isn't anything else that needs to be addressed at like emergency.
But we're 3 miles from the hospital. In 5 minutes, we would be there.
But still, I know there's certain things medically that you just I know that not all most of them apply to birth, but that you don't want to move unless you have certain equipment and stuff. So I
Well,
don't know. I mean, I would probably do the same thing of let's just make sure everything's okay before we just finish driving.
there wasn't much to change. Um, I I saw the clock. It was 10 o'clock, and then well, of course, I pulled him out, and I said, "Him."
Mm,
Yep, boy number 6. Do I like boys? I like boys. Boys are fun.
no. Um,
Boy number 6. So we get to the hospital. They meet us at the door, and they want to take him right away. I said, "You can't. He's still attached." So we go together.
mm,
We go together, and we make it into the whatever room it was, and oh, he's got Down syndrome. And I could almost see the nurse kind of wipe her brow, like, "Shh, you don't have to tell her." And because you know what, that's something that the medical personnel do not know how to do.
mm.
They do not know how to tell somebody. They kind of hem and haw, and oh, I got some bad news for you. Now, by this time,
It's just news.
I've had number 7 for 2.5 years.
Mm,
This has been my life for 2.5 years now, so I know a little bit about it now,
right.
just a little bit.
Yeah.
And to me, when I saw him, it was just a difference. Just like I can look at you, you have brown hair, brown eyes, and well, he ended up having brown eyes and brown eyes, brown hair, and Down syndrome. It's
Yep. Another
another
thing.
thing. That's
Yeah.
all. And I knew what it was like already, and so yeah,
Yeah.
and and yeah, that's one thing. Medical personnel, it's not bad news.
Mhm.
It's different,
Yeah.
and I get kind of tired of the uh, there's a story that they always give you about uh, Holland. I guess you thought you're going to Italy, but you landed in Holland. Anyway,
Okay.
it's just different. That's
Mm-hmm.
all.
Yeah.
It's quite an adventure too.
Yeah.
So I already knew that one of the most important things is to check the heart because half half of the half people with Down syndrome have a heart defect, and and we've already been doing cardiology with
Right.
number 6 once a month, every
7.
other month, and now we're actually to a whole year. We are actually,
You mean number 7?
yeah, number 7.
You said 6.
Oh, no, no, he's got his own issues, but everybody has their own issues.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, number 7, we've already been doing cardiology, and I've got quite the vocabulary and understanding of cardiology, and been through lots of echocardiograms because they do that every time, and and I know what I can ask and what they can say.
Mm-hmm.
They can't say anything diagnostic. Um, and when number 7 was born, I was surprised that there was no murmur. It wasn't until after her heart repair that she had a murmur. And that's because big holes don't whistle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so that the whistle is the murmur. So when number 8 was having his echocardiogram, the echo tech is training somebody.
Mm.
So I'm listening very carefully to their conversation because they can talk to each other about stuff and I can understand what they're saying.
Right.
And I know they can't tell me anything, but I'm listening. And actually, it was I think he had a murmur at first, and so that's good because it's not a big hole.
Right.
um, but it's kind of normal. There's a lot of physiological changes that happen in a body between inside mama to after birth. There are certain valves that are open, certain things that are open that close, and there are changes. The blood circulation changes soon after birth. So that's not a really big deal. You check again later to see if it changed anymore,
Right.
if it's not normal yet. So I learned a lot, and okay, he does not have the heart defect.
Okay.
Well, later we found out that he does have one, but 25% of the population has this defect and they don't know it. It only shows up on autopsies.
Oh.
Yeah. It's called an APO. It's the atrial flap. Um, the before birth, the there's a flap that's open between the atria for blood circulation, and after birth that flap closes, and and for some people it just doesn't close. I mean, it might lay closed and then every once in a while it'll open, but it's not always closed or always open. And so he has that, and it's like no big deal. Um, the head of cardiology at this teaching hospital was our cardiologist. I didn't know she was the chair.
Mm.
So we had the best. I
Nice.
didn't know we had the best. I mean, this is the International Heart Institute, and I knew that I wanted our healthcare to be associated with that hospital before we moved up there,
Mm.
and that's how I chose the hospital for birth.
Mm-hmm.
Is because our insurance would only let us go within 30 miles of our house. And that hospital and that doctor's practice was 28 miles, and the hospital
Yeah.
is 32. So we can leapfrog.
Gotcha. So
So,
you pick the doctor, then the doctor's associated with the hospital, and
mhm.
gotcha.
And she could go to either hospital. The
Mm.
office was across the street from where we landed after number 8 was born because it wasn't born there.
Mhm.
And the hospital's down the street,
Gotcha.
4 miles. So,
Okay.
yep. He was born with pneumonia, 3.5 weeks early, and the doctor that took us in to the NICU was fine. And then we got the doctor that covered the week. His big joke was, with Downs, everything is down, which means he has a very old-fashioned idea. He wanted me to go
Yeah.
home and take care of my other children and let
Oh.
them take care of him.
Oh.
And I said, no, I'm staying.
Isn't isn't that the name Down syndrome come from?
Dr. Langdon Downs.
Yeah, it's a last name, not an implication.
Dr. Langdon Down, no S. Yeah, yeah. But that was his joke. That's why it was supposed to be funny.
Mm,
It wasn't.
no.
And he didn't know who he was dealing with.
Okay, so don't have a lot of time before the house gets too loud. We're gonna have to pause right here in the story. We got a whole lot more to cover still. Um, but want to make sure that audience is also get a break too. Just 2.5 hour episodes are a lot, and I might have to try and figure out where to break this episode up by itself. But we'll see about that one.
So we're leaving a baby in the NICU.
Yep, yep. So kids, you'll have to stay tuned for part 2 and the rest of the stories here. Um, But for right now, Flora, thank you for being on my show, and you will be back soon. But thank you.
My pleasure.
Um, as for my audience, please let me know what you think of these episodes. As I mentioned this, I don't know a lot about the people that listen to it, so please reach out. Let me know on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or wherever you have things. Let me know who you are. Let me know what you've liked of my episodes, what you haven't liked of my episodes. I really appreciate feedback to help my show appeal more to you, appeal to more people, find out what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. So you can find me on Instagram at hold on. It's Curious Joel Cast for Instagram, Joel Circo on Twitter. Um, You can find me on X/Twitter, sorry, at Joel Circo. You can email me at curiousjoelcast@gmail.com. Take feedback there, and you can always leave reviews on these podcasts. Most podcatchers have ways to review and star and stuff like that. All of that I would appreciate. Um, and if you like what you've been listening to and want to hear more about it, like the icebreakers before the episodes and some other episodes that just don't have a place on my show, you can find me. You can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/Curious Joel. There's a lot of bonus content there that you can only see there, and that'll also help support the channel to help me be able to do this more often and better, and hopefully turn this into my job. Yeah, thank you all so much for listening to my show. And as always, stay curious, and I'll catch you on the next episode.